Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast, coming in your ear holes. And I got a couple little voices on the intro today. They come out and absolutely bombed the season episode. We got Bladen. You say hi.
Hi.
We got Rainer. Say hi.
Hi.
They're gonna run this intro with me, guys. This is two of my four kids. They're out here in the garage with me. But let's get into people that make this possible. First, actually, we had Clint Campbell on this week, and we're talking about how to prepare for season when you do not have a target buck located. How it's okay if you don't have one, you got a lot of time left. We go into a bunch of stuff about how sometimes it's a benefit to not have a target buck located. Some steps you can do to help your season out if you can't find one when season comes, and stuff to look forward to if you don't have a buck located when season comes. But it's getting people to make this possible. Start out with Exodus, guys. All the way to August 19th, it is still Velvet Fest, guys. So every camera order is going to come with a scratch off code that could save you up to 15 to 25% off your next camera or arrows. Make sure that you guys are following their email letters. That's where you're going to get those additional savings from their newsletter. If you guys aren't following that, make sure and do that. Make sure you're using hashtag VelvetFest on all your social media posts to win prizes throughout the online event. They'll be sending Exodus gear out to random people that participate in this. And if you guys are in the market for a cam, every cam that is sold from Exodus gets that 5-year no BS warranty. That's literally half a decade, guys, of a camera. And during this Velvet Fest, you can save 20% off on any Exodus render or render bundle using the code VelvetFest, capital V, capital F, no space. Also, if you're in the market for arrows, check out their Exodus MMT tailored arrows, custom arrows built by Chad himself out there absolutely grinding. Just a huge shout out to Chad for putting in a ton of work here recently, building those arrows for us to sling here this season. The newest ad read to the show is 330 Archery. That's 330archery.com, guys. It is the time of year where you want to make sure your bow is ready to hunt. And Tony at 330H Archery has got it going on. Make sure you can count on your bow when you need it the most. 330 Archery bowstrings is made with the best material available. They have a super quick turnaround, and they're offering listeners of this show a discount for supporting this podcast using code Whitetail20 to save 20% off. If you're into supporting a local company, a small guy just starting out trying to make it in the outdoor industry, 330 Archery is for you. Visit 330harchery.com or reach out to Tony personally on Instagram or Facebook to place an order. He'll answer any questions that you have. That's 330archery.com to place those order, guys. And don't forget that 20% off code for Whitetail20. I really hope you guys enjoy this show. Clint's an awesome guy, been creating content in the outdoor industry for a long time. And just a great all-around hunter, great travel hunter. And just a really cool topic that we're talking about. How to not get upset if you don't have a target buck right now going into season. You still got a lot of time to get out there and make moves. So let's get into the show. All right, we got Clint Campbell on tonight. How are you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm hanging in there. It's a hot one. It's spicy, and we'll hopefully we'll get some cooler weather here soon, man. But I did a little bit of deer work this weekend in the hot, in the Africa heat. I always like to wait till it's super hot before I do it. I can't get it done.
Oh, it's brutal out there. I put a video out on Instagram, just me out there, just pulling some verified and some cams are working, and it was beautiful out. And I was like, man, I really love this shit, but it's so weird that I love it because it's just agony. Summertime deer work or trail camming is literally just, there's bugs, it's hot, you're sweating, you got a backpack on your back, it's hot as hell. The shit that you could just blow through in November walking is just an impenetrable wall right now. And you're like, how did I even get back there? The ideas of where you're going to run cameras is like obsolete because shit's 6 foot tall in front of it. You're like, this was not like this in October. It's just crazy how much different the ground is. If someone went and walked my ground that I heavily hunt right now, they'd be like, man, this is like damn near unhuntable. And if they'd walk it during season, they would find the pockets where they're like, okay, yeah, this looks pretty good. But if they just summer scouted, they'd be like, yeah, there's no way. Because there's no deer, like the deer sign's so covered up even. It just looks like it's a vacant land of nothingness out there. So
Yeah. I had one camera that I checked that so every year I kind of hang my cameras and hang some of them in old faithful places, that I know will produce. I don't have a lot of primary food sources for summer inventory really. So a lot of the cameras that I hang are still kind of using primary scrape areas that are going to get hit all year round. So for the most part, I don't get a lot of great velvet inventory. I'll usually get toward the end of summer, like one or two good bucks. Whether they stick around or not, remains to be seen. But I also will take kind of like a handful of cameras every year and I just kind of take flyers, in places where I'm like, all right, I'm not sure, this year, particularly there was a deer I was after last year that I thought I knew where he might've went and spent some time. He has some very kind of specific antler characteristics that if you found a rub, like you would know whether or not it was his. And so I made a guess and went to this one area and hiked in. It was a bit of a fur piece. And sure enough, I found some of what I believe to be his sign. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to put a camera here. And I went in, it's like it's 2 miles in, so it's not easy to get to. And I get there and it's just like, it's like a wall of just green shit everywhere.
yeah.
I didn't even remember how to get in there to check the camera. When I got in there, everything was so grown up. I might've got a 16 gig card was full. I might've got pictures of 5 deer because it got so grown up so quick.
Yeah.
It was just, I was getting false triggers left and right. But I mean, if you have enough cameras, it's valuable to kind of throw those flyers, because what I learned was when I got in there, there's a ton of berries and stuff like that. So I know they're in there. I was just kind of in the wrong area. And I could hunt the edge of where I hung this camera. I wouldn't hunt where the camera is. I would actually hunt a little further, I guess, east of where the camera is. There's a little bit of a drainage that's there, and that's probably what I would set up on. And I didn't move the camera back there because as things die, I think it's going to get used, because there was a ton of deer scat when I was in there scouting in the off season. So I know they're using it. They're just not using it now. And there's a ton of food there right now, just natural browse and stuff like that. So I know they're there. I just don't have any pictures of them right now. And that's okay. I'm not trying to kill them in August, I'm trying to kill them in October. So we'll wait.
And, that kind of goes along with what we're going to talk about today is, preparing for season when you don't have a target buck. I feel like social media, everybody's Instagram stories, if you want to see some giant bucks, go to your Instagram story and just look at everybody looking at giants in Beanfield right now. And everybody's on a giant. I think a lot of times, a lot of those bucks that they're on, it's on someone property they can't even hunt or something. Oh, we found a giant, but they're just trying to show a big deer on Instagram and get the algorithm clicking in their favor. But there's a lot of guys out there right now that do not have a giant on cam. And I am one of them. Right now, I have 6 mobiles out, and I just put out, I probably have 9 reg cams. I haven't pulled them. I just picked up a new piece, man. And I was riding a 4-wheeler around on it. Just imagine that. I have the ability to ride a 4-wheeler to pull a lot of these cams, which is something that I've never been able to do since I moved to Illinois. Like, this is a giant piece. I go out there and I'm like hyperventilating a little bit, thinking like, holy shit, look at all this stuff I got, and I was almost to the point where like, I need to pull everything off my other pieces and just focusing on this, because it's so big. There's so many like little pieces that are all separate that this guy owns. Last year I approached 70 people. My goal, I wanted to hit a number, and I shot for 70. And I reached out to 70 people, whether it was dropping a letter in their mailbox, knocking on a door, whatever. And I got all no's. Well, this year I went to a guy's son's graduation party. And one of the people that I dropped a letter off was there, and he asked me to come hunt his place. So I asked 0 people this year and was just like, all right, I'm going to focus on what I got. I'm not going to try to waste so much time on trying to find a new place. And then he approached me and opened up this can of worms. But I'm out there on this, pulling cams on a 4-wheeler, hanging cams. And Same thing I'm doing. I'm just putting them on, scrapes that old scrapes that I'm finding, but I don't have a giant buck that I'm like, okay, that's the one found. I know I got one that if I could pass him one more year, man, he'd be just an absolute stone cold stunner out there. But
Right.
My co-host actually missed him last year.
Oh, wow.
During late season, he was on a food plot and hit him right in the elbow, like just right underneath him, just nicked his elbow and went right underneath him. And then this year he's like really good already. So I'm like, man, but he's one of those deer that's like, could be humongous, but I'm not known to pass solid deer. But I'm one of those guys that's like putting in a lot of work right now and doesn't have a deer kind of pinned down. So wanted to have you on and kind of talk about your process of how you prepare for season, while not really having that motivation factor of this is what I'm working for. This buck is what I'm working for. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, the preparation, I'm not a 360. I mean, I think about deer every day, for the most part, I'm ate up with it like everyone, listening. But I'm not one of those guys necessarily that's, slobbering over it 365 days a year. I'm more the mindset that I do my work, I work hard when it's time to do it. And then as long as I've done that and my process was good and things of that nature, then, time will kind of unveil the opportunities. And so I put a ton of time in the winter. That's usually the time where I really get a lot of my work done. I don't like to be in the woods in the summer typically. One, I just don't like to be that hot, to be honest with you. It's buggy walking through spider webs and stuff like that. A lot of the areas that I hunt, because I try to find thicker areas, it's all public land. So I'm trying to find the darkest, nastiest places to get into, which means this time of year, sometimes you can't get into them, and I don't really want to go bushwhacking kind of paths through, because I also don't want anyone being able to see how I'm getting in and out of places. So if I know I have a good spot, I'll just kind of let it. I'll hang a cell camera in it, and I won't go back in there until it's about time to hunt. I mean, as far as not having a deer, it's not uncommon for me to not necessarily have a deer in the summer. Again, I don't have primary food sources like a bean field or anything like that in the areas that I'm hunting for the most part. So I'm really relying on that, post-season scouting, identifying primary scrapes by and large, and then hanging cell cameras on those, or regular cameras, whichever I have in my inventory at the time. And then validating whether or not they are actually primary scrapes to see whether or not deer are hitting it all year round. And if they are, great. Probably going to be a lot of does. And that's a lot of what I'm getting on camera right now, which is just fine. I know that there's deer there. Eventually there will be bucks there. Now, to what degree, what the age class might be or the age structure might be, I'll have to wait and kind of see. I don't get too worried though. It's happened too many times over the years where I don't have a deer. And all of a sudden, boom, 2 or 3 show up when the shift happened. I've had the inverse happen where I've had killer bucks in the summer, then all of a sudden, boom, velvet peels and they're gone. And then I spend the rest of the, season for the most part trying to track down something I'm interested in killing. The one way that I kind of circumvent that is I stole this give him his credit. I stole this from Josh Profit, good buddy, both of ours, mutual friend of ours. He said something to me one time when we were talking where he said he's like a coyote. He hunts for opportunity. So once I heard that, I kind of let go the idea of finding a specific buck and then making that my end all be all. And so there might be one that tickles my fancy more than others, but I'll usually try to have 2 to 3 during the course of the season of whatever crop of bucks show themselves and say, it's one of these 3 and I don't care which one. Now I'm going to hunt certain areas with certain winds that might give me a better opportunity to kill one versus the other, but I'm happy to kill any one of these 2 bucks, any one of these 3 bucks, or whatever the case is. And I'm not looking for a giant, PA on public land. I'm Eastern PA. I'm usually looking for something that's like 125 inches or bigger, or 3.5 years or older, and I'm just not going to get a lot of those, and that's just the fact of the matter. And so, for the most part, I don't get too worried about it. I try to just kind of trust the process. I think when you bow hunt, you have to recognize that it is a process, and you kind of have to take the lumps along with the good stuff. I think we were talking offline about this. I think that's one of the things that has become really, apparent to me in starting to do jujitsu is that, I mean, you got to love the process. And if you just stay the course, I was listening to a guy who's like a whatever black belt, and he was like, I've never seen anyone who's willing to put in the time be bad at jujitsu. It just takes time. And
Mhm.
that's the same kind of mindset with bow hunting in my mind. It's like, I've never seen anyone who really wanted to be good at bow hunting that was willing to put in the time and work the process, be bad at bow hunting. And so when I don't have a good deer, I don't get too worried about it. I'm like, you know what? I'll just trust the process and see what happens. And if a deer doesn't show up that I like, then that just means I have to employ another skill set that I have, which is doing more freelance hunting during the course of the season and really just trying to track one down. Maybe move some cameras, spend a lot more time scouting than hunting, which is fine. You know, it's like I've played that game too.
Yeah, it's more like you said, you have to enjoy the process, which is hard, especially this time of year, because just like I put that post on Instagram, I literally said I'm out here running cam, just verifying they're working. That it's literally going to give me zero intel to kill a deer in my mind. It's like so early right now. It lets me know that a deer maybe is alive.
Mhm.
But like you said, you're going to get a lot of blanks. The pictures that you are going to get are going to be subpar to what you're going to get on an oak flat in October, November, where it's wide open. You can catch them 40 yards away, you know, whatever on a cam. You're sweating. You're out there. Shit's not clicking right now, and you're just like, you just got to keep moving your head towards those moments of success. Just like you said in jiu-jitsu, those moments where all the process pays off, where you finally get that choke, you finally get that slip, and you're like, man, I've been working on that for a year, you know, and I finally pulled it off. It's the same thing with hunting. Like, and that's why I'm an emotion. I call myself an emotionally attachable hunter. Like I emotionally attach myself to deer that I want to kill. And sometimes it's not always the biggest deer. Sometimes it's just a deer that I really like or I see a lot and I can't kill. Or we got a buck called West Side. We've been hunting him for 4 years. And when I found him, I think he was probably 4 or 5-ish, you know, and we cannot kill this deer. But every year we think he's dead. And then he shows up just to slap us in the face, be like, I'm still here, boys, you know, and I'm emotionally attached to that deer. Like that, if I killed that deer, it would mean more than, you know, a bigger deer, just because I get attached to him. But that's how I handle the process. I go through the steps in my mind and think, and what if I kill West Side, or what if I kill this, or how am I gonna make it happen? And I believe every step that you take, like physical step that you take in the woods as a whitetail hunter, is just like stacking the deck in your favor. The next ridge, you figure out what's there. You're running a cam in a new spot. Anything that you can do, you're stacking your deck. So hopefully when season comes, you know, you got a line of aces you can pull up your sleeve, where maybe something to lay out and come together. You know, that you pull that cam that you hung now, and damn, there's a giant on it, but he wasn't there in the summer, and now he is. He's regular, and you make a move on him and you kill him.
Right.
We last year we picked up a piece in October, and I hung a cam on it on a community scrape, and there was a bunch of bucks using it. One was at noon. We went in there that same day, and I ended up killing that deer that evening. And it's that small of a tweak, but all those steps that I took earlier, did it help me kill that deer right there? No, but it made me eager enough, because I've been getting my butt kicked for so long, to say, hey, I'm going to go check out this piece that 5 years ago had so much hunting pressure on it that was no bucks on it. And then come to find out, the two guys that are hunting it, they both, one's in the nursing home and one no longer hunts. And it's like a sanctuary for just giant bucks, you know, and in a light switch. But if I wouldn't have been motivated from doing the work earlier and just been like, all right, it's going to be a shit season, it's not going to work out, I wouldn't even investigate that. It wouldn't even be in my back of mind to say, hey, I'm going to go throw a cam up here, you know. And
Yeah, sometimes you just got to kind of, I don't want to say swing for the fence necessarily, but just kind of, you know, get outside your comfort zone a little bit, you know.
yeah,
And that was one of the things I did last year. You know, I knew of a deer that I wanted to kill, and that's the one that I'm hoping is back this year. You know, he is one that I would target. He's a freaky, cool, super cool buck, and a big deer for the area. But I had him. I should have killed him. My season opens middle of September. I have a management unit that opens like 2 weeks early versus the rest of the state, and And I had that deer on camera earlier in September, and he was daylighting. And I pulled the card, and I knew he would be daylighting kind of like the past 2 days. I was like, man, I should just go and try to kill him. I was like, nah, I'm going to play it safe. Like if he's there, he's going to be there. I know where he's at. There's a ton of acorns in there. I'm going to play it cool, and I'm going to wait, until I get a good weather for like a cold front. Well, I ended up waiting, and the deer ended up like, he was in the same area. I know he was there because I picked him up on a couple of different cameras, but I was a day late and $1 short every time I tried to hunt him. So I actually went to a different place that I scouted in the off season, hung a camera on a flyer, and had one of my best encounters of the year was there. It was a really, really good deer. It was a deer I thought not that I knew who the deer was, but I thought I had a picture of him on a camera that wasn't too far away from there, but I couldn't 100% tell. It was a nighttime photo, but the frame looked roughly the same. But he just wouldn't clear some brush and give me a shot. So that was that. But that was just an instance where I didn't know anything about that spot really. It was more of like, man, this deer is kind of whooping me right now, and I don't really have a good setup for him right now as far as the wind goes. So let me go hunt another area and see if I can take that opportunity to learn that area. And if it works out, it works out. If not, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to learn something about the spot, whether it's wind mapping it and understanding how the winds and thermals are going to work there in the morning. Because I hunted that in the morning in October. And so, I think there's value in sometimes not always having like a deer kind of pegged and forcing yourself to kind of go do some searching. Because you'll stumble across some cool stuff, a lot of times just by, I feel like you just get a little bit more in tune. You become a little bit more aware because you're seeking now, as opposed to just trying to show up in your spot to try to kill the deer that you think is going to come by that spot. The other reason why I don't get too worked up over, whether I have a deer, on camera right now, look, I'm not going to minimize. I love seeing velvet pictures. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not trying to downplay the velvet pictures, but a lot of the way I approach things anymore, especially in areas, where I live, where there's a ton of pressure, is that I really probably by and large focus on specific dates that I'm going to hunt than I do specific deer. I know certain areas that I have that are consistent year over with certain types of behavior or traffic happening in those areas. And every year, the mature deer, quote unquote, for that area will make an appearance within a certain kind of couple day window at any one of those locations. And those dates aren't the same necessarily for all those spots, but they're all within like a short kind of window of dates. And so I might spend the earlier part of the season doing a lot of scouting and seeking anyway, because I typically leave those areas alone where I know are going to be active, even if there's a good deer in there. I mean, a deer in one of those areas would have to just show me he is so stupid killable before those dates to make me want to go into that spot, because I know without a shadow of a doubt, if I wait until that window of dates opens, it's going to be fire. And that's going to be my best opportunity if I have the right wind. And so I don't get too worried, because I know I kind of have some places after doing my homework, going through, the process that I've been using for like the past, I guess, this will be the third season that I've used this approach. If I just kind of hang tight and just continue to scout, see what I can find in other places, if I'm coming up with nothing, then I know I have a handful of spots that when those dates hit, that's going to be whenever I need to push all my chips to the middle.
Yeah, going back to what you said before earlier about having that spot, shit ain't panning out, I'll go check this spot over there. I got a checklist on my computer of like just the preseason, what I need to do to prepare myself, talk to landowners and shit like that. But I have at the bottom, prepare the oh shit spots. And that's like, okay, I got off work early, or I got nothing going on. I don't got a buck that I feel like I can kill. Let's go try this oh shit spot that I found late season. I feel like it's good to have those things kind of at least mapped out to where maybe you're gonna, you're packing in to hunt. Maybe you're on a scouting mission. You might hunt, you might not. But I call them, the oh shit hunts. I got a free day. I didn't plan anything. I can't travel somewhere far. You don't have time. What can I make happen? And I have a whole list of these spots, like areas that are all tore up with sign, or really good pinch points I found, or I had an encounter with a buck 3 years ago on October 15th in this area. Maybe if it's around that time, I should go back in there. It's loaded with acorns. Maybe, if we got a good acorn crop, I should run in there. And I feel like having those spots, even if you don't have a buck now, gives you that extra edge of confidence to say, even if I don't have anything in October, I still got these moments in time where I could say, hey, I'm going to go an hour this way and try this spot. And maybe that trip will change the trajectory of my whole season. I'll see some sign, or I'll get an encounter with a deer that I want to hunt. I'll pull a cam there, and I got shooter bucks there. But being able to move and make decisions on what you need to do when you ain't got anything going on, I think is key. And like I said, those hunts where you just go on a whim, that's what I call like an oh shit hunt. Like, okay, let's go try it. Let's give it a whirl. So I really like that tactic, but having those prepared gives you that little, nest egg to say, okay, everything I worked for all summer is not working out. What can I pull out of my hat to try to get it done? And it feels really good when you get it done on like because we did that. It's a crazy story. I'll run it past you real quick. You probably never heard this before, but we're going to one of these spots. Like I scouted it like 7 years ago, like a long time ago. And people say, oh, it's way back. It's pretty far back. And there's a ridge that, like everybody says, you find one natural thing that separates everybody else from to get there. And there's a very steep river ridge to get there. So it's like a mile and a half to the river ridge, and then it's steep. And then you get to the top, and the sign is fire on the top. Like that's where most people stop.
Yeah.
It's full of acorns, really good, but you need to go 300-400 yards past that. So we go 300-400 yards past that, and we set up, and I'm feeling really good. We're a tad bit late, because we're in there scouting, and I'm feeling real good about it. And we're sitting there maybe 20 minutes after we're set up, and we see a mid 150s class buck with 2 does, and he's just milling around in the acorns, and he's coming our way. And I'm on the edge, like, do I grunt at him? I'm trying to decide how much time do I got left? Do I see what he does? And we decide we're just going to see what he does. We're just going to chill. We're sitting there, and he's probably 75 yards at this moment, and we're like, okay, he's kind of working our area. He's got to make one decision to either follow the creek or take a hard right and follow this old fence line up. And we hear the thwack of a bow. And a guy that had no clue was back there, was in a preset ladder stand, shot this buck right in the butt cheek, 75 yards from us. And we're filming the whole thing. We film the shot. The Lubinoc hits him. He does a big circle, comes down, running right at us. And on the video, I'm like, I'm going to finish this buck off for this guy. Like, he's coming right at me. And he does a circle and dies 40 yards from us. And I'm like, I didn't know this guy was even back here. The ladder stand was facing the opposite direction. The ladder stand was, like I said, maybe 65, 70 yards from us. No clue he's back there. We filmed the buck going down. We get down, and I know the guy. I'm like, we get down. I'm like, man, I'm going to go we still probably had like 30 minutes left of the hunt. But I'm like, at this point, like, I'm jacked up for this guy. I'm going to go tell him congratulations and help him, get this deer. And we get down, and I know who it is. And I'm like, holy shit, dude. I was like, I didn't even know you come back to this property even. He's like, yeah. He's like, there used to be a guy that hunted this spot, and he moved to Florida, and he told me about this ladder stand that he had hung back here, and to come and hunt it when there's a cold front around this time frame. And he's like, this is my first, nice buck off this property, and ended up being like a mid 150s 10-pointer. We helped. We took pictures for him out there because we had all the content and stuff out there, and gave him the footage of the deer going down and stuff. And I'm like, that's badass, dude. But just having that spot where if that guy wouldn't have been there, the chances of me killing that deer are very high. Like, I could, if he would have made the wrong move, I could have got a grunt at him. But if you're within 75 yards of a buck, you're flirting the edge of really, and he had no clue we were there. Wind was perfect. There was no way that was going to booger up, other than that guy being in between us. Right. And we're sitting there for 25 minutes watching this deer damn near, and never even noticed that there's a ladder stand on the backside of this big oak tree. And
that's crazy.
Crazy story to get it. Actually, you could tell the story, but we can back it up because we have the footage of the shot, the deer going down in front of us. And then I'm like, I'm going to finish this buck off, because he's running right at us. I got my bow like drawn, and then he does the circle of death out in front of us. And I'm like, man, that's a solid when he got closer, I'm like, damn, that's a solid buck. You know what I mean? And
buck.
yeah, it was one of those, no intel other than I walked that spot like 6-7 years ago. And it was one of my, oh shit spots. We got a cold front. Let's go up here and see what the sign looks like and go past it, Yeah. So having those spots are key.
Yeah, man. And then, I mean, what ends up happening too is that, for me, at least last year, whenever I went to that spot, I remember I was wanting to go hunt the one other spot because it was around the dates that one of the other areas that I kind of had watched for 2 years that had the dates all kind of like, that's whenever it kind of started lighting up, And so I really wanted to get into that other area particularly, and the wind just wasn't right. And I was like, man, I know it's like the next 2 or 3 days, like, is when I got to try to make a move. And I don't have the right wind. And it's like, nah, I'm not going to chance it. I'm not going to booger it up. So I was like, well, I'll just go to this other burner spot. It's exactly what I kind of called it. It was just like a burner spot. I saw it this winter. I hung a camera there. I went back once in the summer just to kind of map my access because it was super thick. And I'll sometimes do that if there's an area I think I might go back to. If it's really, really thick, I'll go back, even though I hate doing it during the summer, but I'll go back when it's really thick to make sure I know how to get there in a way with all the foliage and leaves on and stuff like that, that I'm not going to make a bunch of noise and blow a bunch of deer out, and make sure that the access that I thought I could use is the access that I can actually use during October. And so, ended up walking in there and had a great encounter. And it's actually now it's now one of my favorite spots. I hunted it twice last year. And it's kind of hard to get to. The access that I have mapped out is pretty slick. And then after kind of doing a little bit more investigating, in this off season, it's like I'm in between 2 doe bedding areas, which is exactly why that buck was there. And I followed his rub line to the top of the mountain, or the top of the ridge that I was assuming he was living on, because that was the direction he was headed, and found a rub line. I didn't find any beds, but I'm sure he's bedded in that general area somewhere, because it kind of gets kind of thick with a bunch of greenbrier and a bunch of blowdowns, just like it's top of this ridge, so it catches all the wind. And so just a bunch of bullshit blown all over the place. And so I was like, it's got a camera. I have yet to go. So that's one camera I haven't checked. So I may have a good buck on that right now.
Nice, yeah.
Having a buck, but I haven't been back there to look. And then I did find another bed that was probably 60 yards below where I had the encounter. And so, it's like all the stuff kind of lined up. There's a big, it broke because it was rubbed so much that it got so thin that it finally snapped. But it was just like a big signpost rub. And so there's a big signpost rub and a big primary scrape that was there. And I was like, man, like that's the overlap of, buck's core areas potentially. I was like, that's all, good, just good sign in general, multiple things kind of converging there. And so this year it's kind of one of the good spots. And the cool thing was I was there in that time frame of October that I really like, and that place kind of lit up too. There's a time frame I like in a particular area because I've got some biological data on that area that tells me that it's the spot to be. And then there's a couple spots where I really, really like because I've got good kind of behavior and inventory and traffic in those general areas around a specific date. And these are just dates that I like, that I've kind of corroborated it through trail camera data, not just in those particular areas, but just in other areas as well, and out of state. And buddies of mine who run a lot of trail cameras watching, kind of corroborating the same thing, that there's a handful of dates that regardless of what's happening, if you're in the right spot, like you're in the money, you're in the chips. It's not like it's not going to be fire like November. It's an October timeframe, typically during the lull, is the timeframe that I actually really like, for a bunch of different reasons. But there's a date around like the 18th or so, or 16th, 17th, something in there that is just, you're going to see a mature deer make their first mistakes if you're in the right area. It doesn't mean it's going to be like the rut where they're going to travel 5 miles that day. You need to be up in their business, you know what I mean? And be within, I would say like in their core area, you know what I mean? You can't be, half a mile away. Like he's not going to move that far. But, if you can find where his kind of core area is and where he wants to spend his time, he's going to move a lot within that time frame. He's probably going to check some scrapes within that window. And that's going to be the first time he's going to slip up in daylight. And I've seen it consistently over the past several years watching trail cameras, not just locally, but watching them out of state, and cameras I have out of state, and then talking with, Greg Litzinger. He's another guy. He's the guy who actually turned me on to it, because he mentioned it to me the one day, and then I actually went back and looked at old trail camera data and started going through old pictures, and I was like, man, no shit. I was like, I never noticed it until he said it. And then once he mentioned it and I went back and looked at a bunch of trail camera pictures, I was like, man, he's either like making this up, and I'm just coincidentally seeing it with, trail camera pictures from years ago, or this is, legit. And I was talking to Chad too, he runs, owns Exodus, and he's got piles of cameras, and it's the same thing. Like he sees it too. So
yeah, something about that time. I also think, at least over the last 5 years, for some reason, that time frame from the 14th through there that week is when we get that first cold snap of the year. And the buck that's right here, this 10-pointer right here, and then I got a 9-pointer over there. I killed them both October 15th. Hitting scrapes, coming off the bed. And then that buck encounter that I was just talking about, where that we went to that spot and the other guy ended up shooting it October 15th.
Yeah.
Same scenario. Missed an opportunity on a buck that I killed November 9th on October 16th. Same thing. Seems like there's a time period in there where a front hits during that week. You get some high winds and then it cools off. Not a big direct, like 15-degree cool off. Mm-hmm. And during that time frame is when I really see that, like you said, they're starting to really fire up those scrapes. Like that first cold snap gets them like, oh, okay, let's see what's going on. And I feel like the last 5 years, at least, I've damn near killed 4 bucks out of 5 years within those 2 days, like that time frame. But 3 of those years there was fronts on. I left work early. There's one right behind me, and I killed him at 4:30 in the afternoon on October 15th on a front, coming off bed, come right out of the CRP, hit a scrape right in front of me, grunted him over to me. The 9-pointer, same thing. Found his bed late season, went in there, didn't know what buck was on using it. Went in there, got out of his bed, hit the scrape, hopped the fence onto my property right there, 8-yard shot. The same exact day. I killed those bucks within 300 yards of each other on the same property, same day, back-to-back years, off of a little cold swell during that time frame.
Yeah.
But I see the same thing. There's something about the lull, which a lot of people say it's not like good for, like you said, a lot of deer movement, but there's a day or two in there where shit kind of gets fired up.
Yeah, man. I think the thing is that, that like I said, like you still have to be up in their business. So I don't want to go as far as to say you're bed hunting, because I'm not the world's best bed hunter. I'm more kind of focused on hunting scrapes, and that's kind of my favorite thing to hunt, to be quite honest. But what I've kind of noticed, and this is something Greg and I have talked about, is like usually what I'll see, at least, and I'm trying to think back, like this year, I don't remember the dates exactly. I want to say the one was the 15th, and there wasn't a cold front. It was actually kind of warm and muggy that day. But I think what I think happens is, this is what we kind of hypothesize, at least, is that deer that you'll see, make a mistake in daylight in that time frame, at least what I've seen from my cameras and what I've seen in terms of encounters, has typically been, I won't always say he's the biggest deer. Maybe he's the most mature. Maybe he's the dominant deer. I don't know how we would want to say it, like mature or dominant or whatever, but he's clearly like thinks he's the cock of the walk, and so he, like in my mind, like he's venturing out for the first time and exposing himself because he's trying to get his shit in order. You know what I mean? He's like, all right, things are about to start. The youngins are already running like crazy. The 2-year-olds are already kind of like bumping does around and acting like idiots because they don't know what's going on. I'm going to come out here like the OG. I'm just going to check my spots on my way back to bed. I'm actually not even going to make a big loop. I'm just going to hit the things that are on my way back to bed. So you still have to be hunting like the bedding to a degree, and I'm going to catch the easy stuff on the way through, but I'm going to take my time because I'm going to check a couple things, and then I'm going to get back to bed a little bit late. And that's typically what I've seen. And that's what Greg has seen too. And that's kind of what led me to start to go back and look at trail camera photos. And sure enough, when I did, it was always the best buck that I had in that area. And he may have not have shown, I may not had any inventory on him like during the summer, during the fall. The one that I had the encounter with last year, I had one nighttime picture of him, like, I don't remember, I think it was like October 1st or something like that. Like, right at the beginning of the season, might have even been September, but he was hard horned, you know, and this is a really gnarly kind of area. And I think this was on the 16th. So I hunted that oddball spot on the 15th as a flyer, had a really good encounter. That was a morning. I had that encounter right after gray light. Like it had to have been like 7:30 or 7:45, whenever shooting light, but just after. And so I think it was the next day, or maybe it was the Monday. It might have been the 17th. Because I was looking at the weather. I was like, man, I'm getting the wind I need. So I took work off. I took a personal day. And actually, no, it might have been a Tuesday, actually. And because I like mornings during that time of year, especially in the middle of the week, because there a lot fewer people will be in the woods, and people are hunting after work. Not a lot of people are hunting before work. And so you can get in the mornings, like on a Tuesday. They've done studies actually where they show the increase of hunters going into the woods starting Friday night and sometimes even Thursday night, but Friday night or Friday after work specifically. Saturday obviously is the peak, so like the deer activity goes way down. Sunday, if it's a state that you can hunt, which PA you can't, the deer activity goes down. Monday it starts to get back up. Tuesday it starts to go back. Actually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the best days of the week to hunt for pressure. It's deer actually start to get back to doing what they're normally going to do. And I think this was like a Tuesday. I took off work and I went in and I had that picture of that deer one time, good buck. And there was another one in there that had a couple of daylight pictures of him. He was a nice 8-point, but he was almost the same identical frame. Just I could see he was like a year younger, right? Just tines weren't quite as long, didn't have quite the belly on him and stuff like that. And so 3:00, all of a sudden this deer pops out of nowhere. I ended up not getting a shot because he kind of snuck up on me out of the southwest, and I thought he was going to come from the northeast. That's typically where these deer were coming from. And so, I boogered that one up pretty bad. I was pretty pissed about it, but I never saw that deer one other time on camera or anything. It was like October 1st, got a dark picture of him, never saw him again. And then sure as shit, he was the biggest deer in the area. And sure as shit, he showed up like the 16th or whatever day that was, it was either 16th or 17th, at like 3:00 in the afternoon, And so to me, it's like, it's almost more so that it's the OG on the block trying to get his shit in order before, in 2 weeks, whenever he's got to be ready, when he's ready to roll, And they probably don't think like that. We're giving them way too much credit for for planning ahead, but there's something that's telling that deer, this is my area. I need to kind of make a round. Consistently, I see it every year.
Yeah, we have a lot of bucks show up during that time frame too. Like you said, that just okay, oh man, there's Bud Heavy. We got a buck called Bud Heavy. He's a random guy that pops into one of our small private pieces, and during that time frame, he pops in every now and then, and just to let him know that hey, we're still alive. But he does the same thing, goes hits the community scrape, then rolls out, and then late season sometimes he'll come back too, which is weird. I know he's not very far away, but he's not on the property that we can hunt. But like I said, there's something that makes him switch during that time frame to move a little bit better. But is there anything else that you can pinpoint out that you do right now when you don't have a target buck to kind of get you by? I got a couple things wrote down here. If you don't have any more tactics that you want to throw out there.
Yeah, I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Like I said, I could do all my work in the postseason, and then whenever the season comes, like I have what I have or don't, and I just kind of make a plan from there. I think I used to not be this way. It used to bother me a lot more, and I would kind of, to your point, I'd start making a plan and be like, man, as soon as I can, I'm going to go out and I'm going to scout this area. I'm going to start moving cameras around, and I think from traveling a fair amount and hunting out of state a lot and being forced to kind of go to those places where I don't have trail cameras, I don't have inventory, I don't know what's there, but don't even usually get to scout the places. I think that that's just given me a level of comfort to be able to go into a season. And if I don't have something, I'll figure it out. It's like, I just walk into it knowing at the beginning of the season, I just have to be ready to spend a lot of time scouting. Like that's just all there is to it. Like I'm going to scout a lot more than I have maybe the prior season, because maybe I have things a little bit more dialed in, or maybe a deer showed up that I have a good idea of what he's doing and I can make a plan. There's a new plan every day. and if the consistency is that I'm just probably going to end up walking miles, until I've figured it out. And there's sometimes that I don't, you know what I mean? There's sometimes, I put on the miles. That's 2 years ago. I had a good deer that I had found and vanished. No clue where he went. I didn't have another prospect, like nothing, like locally. And I basically spent the entire season scouting. Pretty much every day I went to hunt, it would be scout, scout, scout. I'd find some sign that I like and I'd set up. And then nothing would materialize. And the next day it'd be the same thing again, And I mean, I think that's really the only way to do it. I don't know that there's you can start moving some cameras around and, and playing that game. I'm more of a long-term camera player where it's like, I like to let them soak and let me know what's going on for the full season, so I don't move them around a whole lot. I'll kind of mark spots for the next year potentially as I'm scouting and trying to, get on a deer. But there's not like any one kind of guarantee, I'll chase. I mean, I guess the biggest thing is when I say scout, I should probably be a little bit more specific. It's like, I'm looking for hot sign, essentially anything that's going to tell me that there's deer, buck activity in an area. So at that point, then I'm not so much keyed in on, oh, there's a good scrape here. I'm more like, I want to see a scrape and a rub. I want to see the two pieces together and like whatever terrain feature or habitat push those deer in that general area, because postseason, I find a good scrape, a good primary scrape. I'm like, man, I know does primarily the ones that are hitting it. Bucks really use them primarily during, pre-rut and rut. They'll hit them a little bit if you have a good looking branch or whatever in the off season and shit like that. But, in the season, it's like, if I find that, I don't know when a buck may be coming through, may or may not be coming through. Is that scrape turn on, November 5th and it's now October 27th? You know what I mean? Am I like a week and a half from that being worth anything or not? I don't know. I might throw a camera on it and then I'll know for next year. But by and large, if I'm just scouting my way through, it's like, I'm looking for where's the scrape and I want to see rubs in close proximity, or I'm chasing whatever the primary food source in the timber is going to be. So I'm looking for, like you mentioned earlier, that oak flat, right? It's like, I'm looking for like anywhere that I've got fresh acorn drops, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or anything that's left over, or, around me, there's not a ton of ag or whatever. So even red oaks actually come into play just a little bit earlier. I know a lot of places it's a late season play, but around here, for me, it's like you've got woody browse and greenbrier and things like that. And then you got the white oaks when they drop. And then after they're gone, I mean, the only thing that really in a lot of these pieces that I hunt is red oaks. So if that's the only thing that's left, they're going to work on that, and so I'll kind of start walking and try to find where things are dropping, and I'll do that too. Like, if I go in to check cameras during the summer, it's like, I'm marking that stuff on my phone when I find it, like, oh man, here's a white oak and it's holding this year. Awesome. Or, hey, here's a big cluster of red oaks. I probably need to check this once all the white oaks dry up and certainly come back here for late season, and so I'm doing that kind of stuff. So it's chasing sources and it's trying to find hot sign, but I want rubs and scrapes together.
Right on. I touch on a couple things talking about that white oak flat. One thing I've learned about those is you get the white oak flat, man, it's loaded up with acorns. Great. You can see that there's a deer browsing in there. Great. What I really love is a buck sign with white oaks. You got some scrapes there. You got some rubs. And what I've learned over the years is when you're on those oak flats, it's normally pretty open. It's more of an open timber. I like to follow that sign back until I find that edge where it thickens up, or the terrain feature where I think, okay, this is the break edge where he might be bedding here, he might be bedding there. And I like to set in between that. I feel like a lot of people like to set on the oaks. You'll see more deer if you set on the oaks, but that's more deer to bust you by the wind and the eyeballs. I follow that sign back. And like I said, a lot of times it's 200 yards. It's not very far from that fire oak flat. And then I find that edge of where it gets real thick, or there's a drop off or a sway or a point or something. I'm like, okay, that buck's probably bedded here. Then I set up in between there. And I've had good success doing that instead of just hunting the acorns, unless you're on a property where there is very little acorns. Mm-hmm. If there's very little acorns, like there's very few oak trees, which a lot of the property I hunt has that as well. If you find that hot acorn tree, you want to set up on that thing, because if you're in a timber that isn't a big woods timber, it's normally thick everywhere. That's the hardest place to find bedding, because it's shit trees, high stem count, browse, real hard to train. So when you find those acorn trees, like I got one picked out right now that has some left over on the ground and has a ton of buds up top. And it's just like in the back of my mind, like, oh man, this is going to be, you want it to be what it is, but you're like, man, this is going to be just absolute the ticket right here, and, but you gotta be proactive and know when that it lights up. Like it'll light up, a white oak tree will light up for like a week and a half, and then it's pretty well shot, around here, especially in those areas where there isn't a lot of acorns. Like it's on fire for a week and then it's cold.
Man, there's one spot I'm thinking of as you're talking where it's a new spot that I hung a camera that I went to check this past weekend. Now there were some young bucks on it, but there was a lot of deer traffic, and it was a brand new camera that I hung there. Like I found it this past winter while I was walking through, and I was like, let me hang a camera here, and went back, ton of deer on it, and there were acorns on the ground. Whenever I was there in the winter, and a bunch of caps and shit, and it was funny, as I was walking in, like I immediately saw like the white oak as I was going in this time. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. And it's and and the thing is like that area is this one spot that I had the spot that lights up in that time frame where I had that encounter where I should have killed that deer last year. And it was always curious to me because so I've scouted that whole thing and I've hunted a couple of different areas, and there's one oak tree that's not far away, but I know there's a ton of pressure over there because I've found stands and I've seen flagging tape. I actually ran into a guy over there one time in that particular area. And then there's this little area that I found that's kind of like undisturbed, and that's where all the action kind of is. But I was kind of curious because I was like, man, whenever the food kind of dries up, I'm like, I'm not sure where they go because I know they're bedded around here. Like I found sheds in there this year, and I'm like, they're here somewhere. I was like, it's curious that I'm not getting them on camera earlier, like, more frequently. And then all of a sudden I find this lone oak tree in like the nastiest, gnarliest, Narnia shit that you ever want to try to walk through. And there's like tons of deer shit there. And like when I put that camera there this off season, there's this pile of deer on the camera just in general. It was like a 16 gig card completely full. Now there's some false triggers because it's summer, but I mean, I would say over half of that card was video of deer.
Yeah. And you're like, oh yeah, I finally figured out where
they were going.
Where they're going.
So now I have two opportunities now to hunt whatever good buck is in that area. He's either going to be hitting that date on that spot, right? That date that it fires up in middle October, or a little earlier in October, he's going to be hanging out right here, not far from here. You know what I mean? So it's finding the spots within the spot. And that's the one thing whenever I talk about targeting those dates, like I do it a lot around scrapes, but you can also do it around food if you know when food turns on. You know what I mean? If you know you have a white oak tree and like you typically get a drop, whatever, week of October. Sometimes if you get a nasty windstorm, sometimes it screws you and it happens in September. But if you can get that drop in sometime in October, it's like, man, that's the spot to be. And you can time that stuff there. And just, white oaks or oaks in general don't drop every single year. So you just always have to go back and requalify like what the food source situation is going to be.
And the last thing I got here is, you're talking about maybe moving cams. You can get into that game. My suggestion would be do not give up on your cams. No. If you have historical data there, if you feel like it's a good spot, you're not sure what time of year it is, don't play the game where I'm going to move a cam over here and try to find one now just so you can get that velvet pick, to have that motivation, tough it out on that cam. Like, oh, I'm going to get some blanks here because it's in a clover field or whatever. Tough it out. Like, you're like, okay, I'm going to put batteries this earlier than I would have before. Like, that's the only downfall. And you're going to have to take a little more time going through Blake's. That's literally the only downfall that you have. But if one thing I could say right now, which might not be your case, is because you don't have a lot of ag, but where I'm from, we have a lot of ag. And the amount of big deer that are literally bedded right on the edge of a cornfield. I'm not shooting you, like one roll right on the edge in the tall grass next to the field is mind-boggling. And that deer is not traveling hardly at all right now. He's hot. He's got a little hidden spot. I was telling you, I was running my four-wheeler on that new piece of private I got. I jumped up a giant in a shaded spot right on the edge of the cornfield, bedded up, seen him bedded. He turned. I stopped. He stood up, gave me the whole view, turned, ran. I was like, I never would have got that deer on trail camera where I was running cams right now in the timber on the scrapes. He's just so far away from anything that he would be during actual season right now because he has a full timber of corn standing there. So don't get discouraged because these bucks aren't moving hardly at all. They have so much, they can literally walk a step and eat food anywhere. Everything's green. There's grass is green, clover, there's browse, there's berries. You know, they got corn, they got beans. Like, they don't have to do anything. Just chill and get big. So don't give up and, you know, mentally tough it out to say, hey, I know this cam's going to be good. It's good in the past. They're eventually going to be here. Because I feel like that's the trap that people get in. They're out there. Shit, I can't get on one. I got a month. I got to find something. I got to find something. Then they're pressuring all this ground more than they should be. And then they miss. The buck shows up 3 days after they pull the cam. And like me, I did the same thing. Trying to find a giant that I'm on. Was on him the year before. Was on him last year. Running a cam for him. Showed up the year before, July 8th. Okay. I'm expecting around 1st of July, you know, that week, he's going to be there. Wasn't there. All the way into August. I'm like, man, he's dead or he's moved. He's transitioned. I'm going to pull this cam and move it somewhere else. Find him in October on a random cam on the edge of a food source. Go hang the cam back up where he was the previous year. He's on that cam, you know, and I just pulled it too early and got antsy and then I'm bucked out. I'm running cams late season and he's daylighting there late season. And I'm like, if I would have ran a cam there and got pictures of that deer, I probably would not have shot the deer that I shot prior because I would want to hunt this deer later on in the year. And now he's daylighting and me being antsy and just automatically thinking that someone killed him or he's gone and pulling that cam for me to get pictures of him 1st of October and then being like, oh, he's here when he was there all along, more than likely. He just wasn't moving, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that, you know, going back to what we were originally talking about, is like, if you don't have a deer on camera, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, you got a lot of season, and that's what they call it hunting. You know, it's like, you know, sometimes I think I love trail cameras as much as the next person. I run a lot of them between local, and then I have a big public piece that I've been exploring that's in northern PA. And now I do have some good bucks on camera up there right now that I know of, you know, so it's not that I don't have any currently. It's just, you know, those are ones like I make a play for, like, strategically on certain dates. I get up there and do that, you know. Locally here, it's like I'll get out, you know, before work in the morning, or, you know, certainly every weekend, some evenings after work and stuff like that. So I always prefer to have something around here to chase. But, you know, it's just, it's hunting, and sometimes we rely on the cameras so much that we forget that, like, this is a game that for years was played by just going into the woods and observing. And so if you have to go back to that, like, that's okay, you know. Yep. And if you do have cams out, just let them work for you, you know, and be patient. You know, it's a marathon. It's a lot of season, man. It comes in October. Most places it doesn't end until end of January sometime, you know. Yeah. So no one says you have to kill a buck the first week of October or whatever. Unless, you know, you're Jake Bush, then it happens to you every year.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to be that guy. And a lot of times, you know, we're blessed being a 2 buck state, but if I was a 1 buck state, I wouldn't want to kill that early, man. I'd have to travel somewhere because it's what I love to do. So the urge to kill is definitely there, but you have a lot of season, but you have a lot of time till season. Something can pop up.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean,
that's the next day, and it's a complete game changer. And then you've been wanting to move some cams. They ain't been on. Then, okay, you locate a deer. Now move your cams.
The only time I start to get a little, I won't even say a little nervous, but whenever I start to realize that I'm going to have to take an alternative approach to the season, which is just, I'm going to probably have to hunt my local area like I'm out of state, meaning that I'm going to have to just go to places, maybe start places I'm familiar with, and just do a lot of scouting, is after I pull cards after like August 22nd. Like there's, and I went back and looked at trail camera data for this too, because I was talking to Chad about this, and not that I'm a big like Mark and Terry Drury fan. I think they've done great things for the outdoors, but they hunt, very manicured places. But they've talked about historically that there's a date in August. It's around the 20th or the 22nd of August that you typically will see some out of town bucks, if you will, right? Kind of make their way through. Like there'll be new bucks all of a sudden show up where it's like, I haven't seen that guy all summer. And all of a sudden I've got like 2 pictures of him the past 2 days. And then like he vanished again. A lot of times what that is just kind of like those deer, that's their fall core range or core area. And they're coming through just to kind of check out their party scene for the fall, So I went back and looked at a bunch of trail camera data that I had from local and from some out of state stuff that I had. And sure enough, man, it was like around that date, there would always be like 1 or 2 new bucks show up. And then if I went and looked at the fall photos, like sure as shit, sometime in middle October, there's one of those 2 deer that's now hanging out, and I've got like 3 or 4 pictures of it. You know what I mean? So I talked to Chad about it, and he went back and looked, because again, he's got piles of camera data.
Yeah.
He looked at it, and yeah, it holds true. Now it's not 100%, but that's the reason why sometimes I won't even pull cameras until August, because I don't care until that August date, because at that point I'll know I'll probably have every buck that's going to potentially be in the area on camera. I'm going to lose some to the shift. I'm going to gain some that may have showed up on camera on that 20th and the 22nd of August. And I'll have a good idea of what's going to be around. So that's the only time whenever I start thinking about, all right, I need to start thinking about what my plan is going to be for the fall, because I didn't have anything early in velvet. And then the excursion to check out their core range in, August of 2 bucks didn't happen. So that tells me I'm going to be kind of up shit's creek. You know what I mean? As far as like knowing who's here, I'm going to just have to go figure it out. So that's the only other date I would kind of throw out there for people to kind of think about if they're running cameras. Like that to me is like a milestone date. It's like, that's the date. If I don't do anything else, I wait and I pull cameras after that date. That way I've got all the inventory of the deer that are going to potentially be in that area.
Good tactic, man. I've heard that from them too. And we see that too. I love to pull cameras like the 15th of September, because we start October 1st. And if I got a buck in there 15th of September, I'm like, okay, he's a player. This deer's a player. He's hard horn. He's a player. He's in my area.
Yes. So the inverse is true for me, because I come in like the 17th of September. So if I have one, if I have a really good one during the summer in velvet, I usually have probably like a week to try to kill him before he shifts, and he might be gone before that, but that's usually like so there was a deer that there was a bean field that wasn't far. When I say it wasn't far, it was like a mile and a half or something from like this corner of public I could hunt. And I ended up glassing a big deer in there. He's probably mainframe 10, like probably pushing 160 inches, like really good buck, especially for around here. It's the biggest deer I've ever seen on the hoof, like locally. And glassed him up like a week before the season. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. And so I was like, man, like the doe bedding's going to be here, right? Because there was some like smaller parcels of property in between like where I glassed him and like the public. And there was a couple wood lots, and I was like, well, the does are going to be bedded there, so he's not going to want to bed there. And he was with 2 other bucks that were good. Like he was a hammer, and then the other 2 were probably like 130s. And I was like, if I'm him, I'm probably bedded in this little corner. I was like, all right. I was like, opening day, I was like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to see if I can figure out where he's bedded, because I think he's bedded in that corner. Well, I went back there, dude, and I got within 20 yards of him and jumped him. Pissed me off, because I knew I made an aggressive I made an aggressive move, because I knew I probably had 1 week. If I was going to kill that deer on an early season pattern, I had 1 week to do it. You know what I mean? And that was it. And so I knew, I was like, if I blow him out, I blow him out. And I really wasn't going to see him the rest of the season probably anyway, because probably a 90% chance he's going to shift, and out of my life. I was like, or I go in and I push the envelope and I actually find him and kill him. And I mean, if you asked me to put money on it, I would have never bet any amount of money that was meaningful to me that I was going to find that deer in the first place, let alone basically walk right up to his bed.
Yeah. A lot of times when you got a gut feeling, if you know the area, you better bank on it being right. At least, go in there and hunt it like it's being right. And if you're wrong, then you learn something. But a lot of times at like the spot that I'm on right now, where I'm running 2 mobiles in there. And I hung the cams, and I told my buddy, I said, there won't be anything on these cams for months. He's like, why are you hanging them there? I'm like, because I don't want to come back. I'm good with it. Just I need pressure to push the deer back there. And there's does back there, but no bucks. Just like I thought, no bucks. Couple months, they'll be back there. It's just when you got a gut feeling about something, you're like, I literally walked into that spot and I've been messing up on this property the last 4 years of my life, not knowing that this was here. And then you walk into something like that and you start putting the pieces together, every other encounter or buck you killed, or you're like, it's been right here the whole time, it just,
yeah. Man, finding those
it.
little gems like that, dude, is key.
Yeah.
There's a spot, like I checked this camera this past weekend, and there's a spot that I found this postseason. I hung a camera in it, and there's some sign in there. I mean, there's no big hammer sign or anything like that, but there's good rubs and stuff like that all through it. But the reason I got excited about it was, the camera I checked, there was like a couple scrubby bucks on it, but a ridiculous amount of deer, like ridiculous, like deer every day. Again, it was one of those cameras that was 16 gigs on video and was completely full when I checked it. Like I missed like probably 2 weeks worth of pictures because it was just completely full. And it's when you talk about those little areas that pop out that like you find that you overlook for a long time. This is a spot I've been in and around this area for the past probably 3 years. Never dawned on me to walk into this area. And again, it's one of those little gems. There's a parking area that's not far away. You know what I mean? So it's probably why I've walked by it 100 times. And I started really looking at it on a map, this piece I was scouting, because there was an area that was a couple, like 2 miles away. And that's an area that I was really interested in. That was the area I talked about earlier. I had the camera that's just like a wall of shit. Like no pictures like going on there, at least for right now. And on the way out, when I hung that camera, I just happened to look on my map and I was like, man, there's a little different vegetation right there. You could just see the different coloration on the map. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, let me walk in there and check that out. Well, there's some food that's around that's not on the public, but it's pretty close. You know what I mean? And it's a bunch of hardwood. Like the whole thing is hardwood. And there's this one little strip of some cedars, some pines and stuff like that. And it's just like, when I recognized it, I was like, how did I not ever see this before? Right. And as you know, and like all your listeners, I'm sure know, is that, it creates this edge and diversity of habitat. Right. And like anytime you don't know what to do and you're looking at a map, find an edge and find diversity of habitat. Anything where two different things come together is a great place to start to find deer sign and then figure out what you do from there. And so I went in there and walked around and like started looking. There was just like deer shit everywhere. There were rubs on almost every other tree. Now, not huge, mind you, right?
Yeah.
But still buck activity. And that is one place I'm super excited to hunt this year because there's not a stitch of human sign in that entire little area, right? And the places that I hunt typically, man, it's like you see flagging tape. There's flagging tape in places where I walk into hunt a lot of times. You know what I mean? And it's just because there's that many people in this area that are hunting these places. But this was like one of those little corners where, I've overlooked 100 different times. And for whatever reason, it caught my eye this time. And I'm like, man, this could be a gem little spot. You know what I mean? It's like, and that gets me fired up because that's a place where it's like, if I don't have a buck.
Yeah, you can go and throw something at it.
Right. Because if I do have a buck, I won't go to it. But that might be the biggest mistake of the year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes not having a buck is actually good for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's actually a good thing because it forces you to go kind of explore, find new things. And now all of a sudden you've now got, instead of having 5 or 6 really good spots, well, now maybe I got 7 or 8. You know what I mean? And that's how you start to multiply your spots and you start to ensure that you have good hunting seasons every year because now you have really good, a bunch of different good spots for a bunch of different winds. So not having a good deer in velvet isn't the end of the world. It's like, I would say, look at it as a blessing, man. It's giving you an opportunity to explore. Don't look at it as, a weight that's going to drag you down this season. It could mean you're going to have the best season you ever had.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think that's a perfect spot to end it, dude. Don't give up on it. Keep ripping. And just because you ain't got a target buck, like you said, it's not the end of the world. If you don't have a target buck, you're probably going to be less frustrated and you're probably going to kill a nice buck anyways, just off a whim. And it's going to be a funner season than you struggling like I do to kill one deer all year. And at the end of the year, you're like, man, I wasted my whole year on this deer, you know? So there's a,
Right.
there's a silver coat to everything. And sometimes not having it is better off. So before you get off there, let people know where they can find your content before I hang up on you.
Yeah, it's truthfromthestand.com is the website. You know, all the stuff is there. My buddy Aaron Hepler has been writing some articles on the blog, so that's been awesome. Check some of those out. He does a good job with those. Podcasts you can find Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast pretty much anywhere that there's podcasts available. You can find it. Got some stuff on YouTube. And Skull Brew Coffee. We do Skull Brew Coffee too.
Yeah.
Skullbrewcoffee.com. We sell some coffee, give back to conservation, and especially this time of year, we got little travel pour over cups that I always take on all my travel hunts. Pick up some of those so you're not drinking that rot gut
gas station coffee.
Well, that or the rotten good instant stuff that you do that, you know, gives you a case of the its, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
About 3 days in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where we're at, man. I appreciate you you having me on, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate all the content that you put out through the years. I've definitely been following it and learning from your guest. Always a great feel of your podcast, and always pick some tidbit up when I'm listening. So I appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, brother.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this show with Clint. An absolute great guest, great podcast all around. Got me fired up for season. I don't have my target buck located right now, but I know where he's held up during season, and I'm just going to keep grinding out till I find him. Appreciate you guys listening to all the way to the end. Love you guys. If you guys would leave a review to the show, let me know how I'm doing. I'm out here in the garage grinding by myself. Like I said, had a couple special guests on this episode coming out here with me with my boys chiming in, and they got something to say to you guys to end the episode. Can you say it? Always do the right thing.
Always need a right thing.
And can you say leave a legacy?
Leave a lady.
A legacy. They try their best, guys. Like Bladen said, always try to do the right thing, right? And try to leave a legacy. And Whitetail Legacy is out until we're coming in your ear holes next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Love you guys. Appreciate you. Get out there, find your target bucks, and have some fun. Whitetail Legacy out.